The day my boyfriend left me for his boss. He thought he was walking away from a woman who had nothing left to offer him. He was wrong. He just didn't know how wrong he was. I remember sitting across from him in the little restaurant where we'd celebrated almost every important moment of our relationship, our first anniversary, his promotion, the day he told me he wanted to build a future with me. That night, though, he wouldn't look me in the eyes. He kept staring at the table. His hands were folded tightly in front of him, and every few seconds, he would take a breath like he was preparing himself to say something painful. I already knew, sometimes, you can feel the end of something before the other person says the words. "Emma," he finally said. I looked at him. "What?" He swallowed. "I think we need to talk." I almost smiled. Those words never meant anything good. "We've been talking for the last 20 minutes, I said. "You just haven't said anything." He looked away. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "I've met someone else." For a few seconds, I couldn't hear the restaurant around me. The conversations disappeared. The clinking glasses disappeared. Even the music seemed to fade. There was only his voice, someone else. I stared at him. "Who?" He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. "Victoria." My heart dropped. Victoria Hale, his boss. The woman whose name I had heard dozens of times over the past year. Victoria had built Hale & Cross, one of the fastest-growing consulting companies in the city. She was confident, powerful, wealthy, and according to Daniel, she was everything he admired in a person. At first, I had never been threatened by her. Why would I be? Daniel was my boyfriend. He used to tell me I was the only woman he could imagine growing old with. He used to hold my hand while we walked through the city. He used to talk about our future like it was already written. But apparently, some promises have expiration dates. "You're leaving me for your boss," I whispered. Daniel finally looked at me. "I didn't plan for this to happen. That's not what I asked." He sighed. "I've developed feelings for her." I laughed. Not because it was funny, it's because sometimes your body doesn't know what else to do when your heart is breaking. "How long?" He didn't answer. Daniel. "A few months. A few months." I stared at him. Months. While I was planning our future, he was building another relationship behind my back. While I was saving money for the apartment we had talked about renting together, he was falling for his boss. While I was defending him to my friends, whenever they questioned his ambition, he was quietly preparing to leave me. And then, he said something that made the pain even worse. "Victoria understands where I'm trying to go." I looked at him. "What does that mean?" "She's ambitious. And I'm not?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He rubbed his forehead. "I just think we're becoming different people." That sentence stayed with me because I knew what it really meant. He thought she could take him somewhere I couldn't. He thought being with Victoria would open doors. He thought I was the smaller life, the safer choice, the woman who would always be there. And Victoria? She was excitement, power, connings, money, opportunity. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I asked the one question I couldn't stop myself from asking. "Do you love her?" Daniel was silent. Finally, he said, "I think I could." That was enough? I stood up. He looked surprised. "Emma, wait. No, I don't want us to end badly." I smiled sadly. "You already ended it badly." I picked up my bag. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. That was the last time I ever let Daniel touch me. I walked out of that restaurant with tears in my eyes. But what Daniel didn't know was that the woman he had just left wasn't the same woman he had met 2 years earlier. And he definitely didn't know what was about to happen next, because 3 months later, Daniel would walk into a meeting expecting to impress a potential client, and that client would be me. Not the old me, not the woman he had left behind, but the woman who had become the biggest opportunity his company had ever seen. And when he realized who was sitting at the other side of that conference table, his face went completely pale. But before we get there, you need to understand how we got to that room. Because Daniel hadn't always been this person. At least, I didn't think he was. When we met, he was different. Or maybe I was simply too in love to notice the warning signs. Daniel and I met at a small coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday morning. I was 28. He was 30, and neither of us was looking for anything serious. At least, that's what we told each other. I had just started working as a junior financial analyst at a small investment firm. It wasn't glamorous. My office was tiny. My salary wasn't impressive. But I loved what I did. I loved numbers. I loved finding patterns other people missed. I loved taking a messy situation and turning it into something clear. Daniel worked in business consulting. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't famous. But he was smart, confident, funny, and incredibly good at making people believe in him. The first time we spoke, he accidentally took my coffee. He walked toward my table, picked up the cup, took one sip, and immediately stopped. "That's not mine." I looked up. No. He looked at the cup, then at me, then back at the cup. "I'm sorry." I laughed. "You've already tasted it." "I know." "Then you might as well finish it." He smiled. I don't think that's how hygiene works. That was our first conversation. A week later, we had dinner. A month later, we were officially together. And 6 months later, I couldn't imagine my life without him. Daniel was the kind of person who made big plans. He talked about starting his own consulting company. He wanted freedom. He wanted success. He wanted to be recognized. I supported him. Every time he doubted himself, I reminded him of his strengths. When he wanted to take an expensive course, I helped him organize his finances. When he started applying for better positions, I helped him prepare for interviews. When he got rejected, I told him to try again. Then came Hale and Cross. Daniel got an interview with Victoria Hale. Everyone in his professional circle knew her name. She had built her company from almost nothing. She was young for a CEO, sharp, demanding, successful. Daniel came home from his interview looking excited. "I think this could change everything," he said. I smiled. "Then I hope you get it." He did, and at first I was genuinely happy for him. His first week at Hale and Cross was amazing. He came home talking about new ideas, new clients, new opportunities, and of course, Victoria. "She's incredible," he said one night. I smiled. "You've said that 3 times. Because she is. What makes her so incredible? She sees things differently." I laughed. "Careful, you're starting to sound like a fan." He kissed my forehead. "You're still my favorite." I believed him. For the first few months, everything seemed normal. Then the late nights started. At first, it was occasional, then it became routine. "I have a client meeting. Victoria needs me to finish something. We're preparing for a major presentation." I never accused him. I trusted him. That was my mistake. One Friday night, he came home at almost midnight. He smelled like expensive perfume. Not mine. I noticed it immediately. He saw my expression. "What?" "Nothing. You're staring." "I just noticed a smell." He froze for half a second. Then he laughed. "Victoria's perfume. She hugged me after the presentation." I nodded. "Okay." He walked toward the bedroom. I stayed on the couch. Something inside me had shifted. Not enough to make me leave, not enough to confront him, but enough to make me question things. And once doubt enters a relationship, it doesn't leave easily. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing little things. He became protective of his phone. He changed his password. He started turning the screen away from me. He stopped telling me details about work. And whenever I asked about Victoria, he became defensive. "Why are you so obsessed with her?" "I'm not. You always ask about her, because you talk about her constantly." He would sigh, then walk away. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the man who had once promised me everything. So I ignored the signs. Until one evening, I saw a message. Daniel had left his phone on the kitchen counter. A notification appeared. From Victoria. The message was short. "Tonight was perfect. I wish you didn't have to go home." I stared at the screen. My hands went cold. I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. I already knew. When Daniel came home that night, I asked him, "Are you seeing Victoria?" He stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "No." The answer came too quickly. And that's when I realized something. Sometimes the lie isn't painful because you don't know the truth. It's painful because you finally realize the person standing in front of you thinks you're stupid enough to believe it. After that night, I stopped asking questions. I started watching. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed the truth. And the truth came faster than I expected. Daniel's behavior changed completely. He was distant at home, but energized whenever he talked about work. He began buying expensive clothes. He started going to private events. He had new friends, new habits, new priorities. And somehow I was becoming an inconvenience. One evening, I asked him if he still loved me. He looked irritated. "Why are you asking that?" "Because I want to know," he sighed. "I don't know." Those 4 words hurt more than anything else. I sat there quietly. "I don't know. I'm confused. About me? About everything." I nodded slowly. Then I asked, "Is it Victoria?" He didn't answer. That was the answer. I packed a small bag that night. Daniel watched me. "Where are you going?" "My sister's." "You're leaving?" "For now." He didn't stop me. That hurt too. I had spent 2 years believing that if we ever reached the edge, he would fight for us. Instead, he stood there silent, almost relieved. I drove to my sister's apartment with tears running down my face. But the next morning, something changed. I woke up angry, not the kind of anger that makes you scream, the quiet kind, the kind that makes you think. I opened my laptop. I looked at my finances, my saving, my investments, my career, and suddenly I realized something I had forgotten while loving Daniel. I had a life, a very good one. I had spent years building my career. I had invested carefully. I had saved money. I had learned how businesses worked. I had developed skills. And while Daniel was chasing someone else's approval, I had quietly built something of my own. At the time, I didn't realize how important that would become. 2 weeks later, Daniel moved out. He sent me a message. "I think this is for the best." I stared at it, then deleted it. No argument, no begging, no explanation. I didn't wish him luck. I didn't wish Victoria anything either. I simply moved forward. I focused on work. And then my manager called me into his office. "Emma, I want you to consider something." "What?" "We're opening a new corporate investment division." I listened. He explained the plan. We would work with large companies, businesses that needed financial strategy, long-term investment planning, expansion support, risk management. The clients would be much larger than the ones I had handled before. "Do you think I can do it?" He smiled. I wouldn't be asking if I didn't. That conversation changed my career. I worked harder than I had ever worked. I studied, I learned. I stayed late. I stopped checking Daniel's social media. I stopped wondering what he and Victoria were doing. And slowly, my life became bigger. 3 months passed, then 6. I received a promotion, then another. My responsibilities increased, my income increased, my confidence increased. One afternoon, my manager placed a file on my desk. "We're reviewing a potential acquisition." I opened it. The company was looking for a strategic financial partner. The name on the file made me stop breathing. Hale and Cross. I stared at the document. For a moment, I thought about refusing. Then I smiled, because I realized something. This wasn't personal, it was business. And if Hale and Cross wanted the best financial partner available, they would have to compete for it. I didn't ask for the account. I didn't manipulate anything. I simply prepared the strongest proposal my team had ever created. Weeks later, our proposal made it to the final round. There were 3 companies competing. And then came the meeting. I didn't know Daniel would be there. I didn't know Victoria would be there. I only knew I was walking into an important business presentation. But when the conference room doors opened, I saw them. Daniel was standing beside Victoria. He looked older, tired, and when his eyes met mine, his entire expression changed. He whispered my name. Emma? I smiled politely. Good morning. Victoria looked between us. You two know each other? Daniel couldn't answer, so I did. We used to. The conference room became completely silent. Victoria looked at Daniel, then at me. Used to? Daniel cleared his throat. We dated. Victoria's eyebrows lifted. You never mentioned that. Daniel looked uncomfortable. I didn't think it was relevant. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because suddenly I understood something. He was embarrassed, not because he had betrayed me, because the woman he had left behind was now sitting across the table as a professional equal. I opened my presentation. Shall we begin? Victoria nodded. Daniel sat down. For the next hour, I ignored the past. I presented numbers, growth projections, risk analysis, expansion opportunities. Our strategy was simple, clear, strong. By the end of the presentation, Victoria looked impressed. Daniel looked stunned. When we finished, she closed the folder. Excellent work. Thank you. She turned to her team. I'd like to move forward. Daniel looked at her, then at me, and I saw something in his eyes. Regret, but I didn't care. The deal was finalized 2 weeks later. Our company became Hale & Cross's primary financial strategy partner. And because Hale & Cross was expanding rapidly, the account became one of the largest in our portfolio. I became the lead strategist, which meant I had to work directly with Daniel. At first, it was awkward. He tried to act professional, so did I, but then he started finding reasons to speak with me. Emma, can we talk? About what? There is no us, I know. Then what is there to talk about? He looked down. I made a mistake. I stayed silent. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I looked at him. That's unfortunate. Emma, no, Daniel, he sighed. I miss you. I shook my head. You miss who I was. What does that mean? You miss the woman who believed you were the best man in the world. He didn't respond, I continued. But she's gone. His face tightened. Can we at least be friends? No. Why? Because I don't need anything from you. That sentence stayed with him. I could tell. Over the next several months, our business relationship grew. Hale & Cross expanded into 3 new markets. Our investment strategy helped them secure major contracts. Their revenue climbed. And because I was leading the account, Daniel saw me regularly. He watched me become more confident, more respected, more successful. But the strangest part was Victoria. She started trusting me. She asked for my opinion. She invited me to strategic meetings. Eventually, she asked me to help with a major expansion plan, and that's when I learned something I never expected. Victoria didn't know Daniel had cheated on me. She knew we had dated. She didn't know the timeline. She didn't know he had been with her before our relationship officially ended. One evening, after a long meeting, she asked me to stay behind. Emma, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why did you and Daniel break up? I paused. Then I answered honestly. He left me. She looked surprised. For me, yes. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't know, I know. Emma, I would never knowingly. I don't blame you. She stared at me. Why not? Because you didn't betray me. She looked thoughtful, then she said something that surprised me. Daniel has changed since you left. I smiled. People often change when they lose something they thought they would always have. She nodded, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Victoria leaned back in her chair. There's something else you should know. What? Daniel has been asking me to make him a partner. I stared at her. Really? She nodded. And I'm considering it. For the first time, I felt something other than anger. Concern, because I knew Daniel. He wanted success. He wanted recognition. And if he was willing to abandon our relationship for an opportunity, what would he do to get partnership? I didn't know. But I was about to find out. Daniel became obsessed with becoming a partner. He started staying late. He volunteered for every major project. He wanted to lead important meetings. He wanted Victoria's approval. But something was wrong. His results weren't as good as they used to be. He made mistakes, small ones at first, then bigger ones. One financial projection was incorrect. A client presentation had missing information. A major contract nearly fell through because Daniel had overlooked a clause. Victoria began questioning him, and Daniel blamed everyone except himself. One afternoon, he walked into my office. "I need your help." I looked up from my computer. "With what?" "I have a presentation tomorrow." "Okay, I need you to review it." I almost smiled. "You have a whole team. I trust you." I looked at him. "You should have thought about that before leaving." He lowered his eyes. "Please." I sighed. Not because I wanted to help him, because I wanted to protect the client. I reviewed his presentation. It was full of mistakes. I marked them. "This needs to be fixed." He looked embarrassed. "Can you help me?" "I already did." "Emma." "Daniel, I'm not your partner anymore." He stared at me. "I know, and I'm not going to rescue you." His face changed. "I understand." But he didn't. The next morning, he gave the presentation. It went well, because he had corrected the mistakes. Afterward, Victoria thanked me. Daniel didn't. He simply looked at me. I knew what he was thinking. He needed me. But needing someone isn't the same as respecting them. A few weeks later, something happened that changed the entire situation. Our company discovered irregularities in one of Hale & Cross's internal financial reports. Nothing illegal, but serious enough to require investigation. I was assigned to review the records, and Daniel's name appeared repeatedly. I spent 3 days going through documents. Then I found it. Daniel had been moving certain expenses between departments to make one project appear more profitable than it actually was. He hadn't stolen anything, but he had manipulated numbers to make his performance look better. If the mistake had continued, it could have caused serious financial problems. I reported it immediately. Victoria called an emergency meeting. Daniel walked in, confused. Then he saw the report. His face changed. "Emma?" I remained calm. "This isn't personal. You investigated me. I investigated the numbers. You knew I was responsible. I followed the evidence." Victoria looked at him. "Did you do this?" Daniel hesitated. "I was trying to improve the presentation." "That's not what I asked." He looked down. Finally, he admitted it. "I made adjustments." Victoria closed her eyes. She was disappointed. Not angry, disappointed. And somehow, that was worse. Daniel turned toward me. "You could have talked to me first." I looked at him. "You lied to the company. I made a mistake. You made a choice." He said nothing. Victoria ended the meeting. Daniel was removed from the partnership discussion. And suddenly, the man who had left me, because he thought Victoria could make his life better, was watching that dream disappear. But there was one more problem. Hale & Cross had become dependent on our company, and I was the person responsible for their biggest account. Daniel realized that, and instead of accepting his mistake, he started trying to win me back. The first message arrived on a Monday morning. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Another came an hour later. "I know I hurt you." I ignored it. Then I was stupid. Still nothing. Then, "Please give me one chance to explain." I finally replied. "There is nothing left to explain." He called immediately. I didn't answer. That evening, he waited outside my office. I walked past him. "Emma." I kept walking. "Please." I stopped. "What?" "I want to apologize." "Okay," he looked surprised. "That's it?" "Yes. I thought you'd say something." "I don't have anything to say." He looked hurt. "You've changed." I smiled. I had to. He stepped closer. "I still love you." I looked directly at him. "No, you don't." "I do. You loved me when I was convenient." "That's not fair." "It is." He shook his head. "I thought Victoria could help me become the person I wanted to be. And did she?" He looked down. "No." I nodded. "Then maybe you should stop blaming other people for your choices." He looked at me. "I made a mistake." "Yes, I regret it. I believe you." "Then why won't you give me another chance?" "Because regret doesn't rebuild trust." He had no answer. I walked away, but the situation wasn't over. A week later, Victoria called me. "What?" "I'm restructuring the company." "Okay, Kay." I want you to lead the financial strategy division. I froze. Victoria, that's a major position. I know. Why me? Because you understand our business better than anyone. She paused. And because you don't let personal feelings control professional decisions. I smiled. Thank you. Then she said, I want you to become our largest strategic partner. That meant my company would control a massive portion of Hale & Cross's financial operations. It was the biggest opportunity of my career. I accepted. Daniel found out the same day. He called me. You got the position. Yes, congratulations. Thank you. There was silence. Then he said, I'm happy for you. I believed that he wanted to be, but I also knew it hurt him, because I had become everything he once thought I couldn't be successful. Independent, confident, and completely uninterested in him. Then he asked, Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't left? I paused. Sometimes. What do you think? I think I would still be trying to convince you that I was enough. He was silent. And now I don't need anyone to convince me. That was the last personal conversation we ever had. Or so I thought. 6 months later, Hale & Cross faced its biggest challenge. A major international client threatened to leave. If they did, the company could lose a huge amount of revenue. Victoria called an emergency meeting. Everyone was there, executives, department heads, financial advisors, and Daniel. He was still working there, but his position had been reduced. He wasn't leading projects anymore. He was trying to rebuild his reputation. The room was tense. Victoria looked at me. What do you recommend? I opened my file. We don't panic. Everyone looked at me. The client isn't leaving because of money. Then why? Someone asked. Because they don't trust our expansion plan, I explained the problem. Then I presented a solution, a restructuring plan. It would require patience, discipline, and transparency. Victoria listened carefully. Finally, she nodded. Let's do it. Daniel spoke. I agree. I looked at him. He continued. Emma's plan is the strongest option. For once, there was no jealousy in his voice, no competition, just honesty. We implemented the plan. 3 weeks later, the client stayed, the company recovered, and Hale & Cross entered its strongest growth period yet. That night, Victoria hosted a small celebration. I stood near the balcony, looking over the city. Daniel walked toward me. Can I say something? I turned. Sure. I used to think success meant having the right person beside you. I said nothing. He continued. Now I think success means becoming someone you respect. I smiled. That's a good lesson. I learned it too late, better late than never. He looked at me. I'm sorry. This time I believed him. But forgiveness didn't mean returning. So I said, I forgive you. His eyes lifted. Really? Yes. He smiled. Does that mean no? His smile disappeared. I laughed softly. Forgiving you doesn't mean I want you back. He nodded. I know, and honestly, Daniel, what? I hope you become successful. He looked surprised. Why? Because then maybe you'll finally stop trying to prove yourself to everyone else. He smiled. Maybe. We stood there quietly, then he walked away, and I watched him disappear into the crowd. For the first time since the breakup, I felt completely free, not because I had defeated him, not because I had become his biggest client, not because he regretted leaving me. I was free because I no longer needed his regret. People later asked me if I planned everything. They wanted to believe I had become his client just to punish him. They wanted a dramatic revenge story. But the truth was much simpler. I never became successful because I wanted Daniel to suffer. I became successful because I refused to let betrayal decide the rest of my life. My revenge wasn't destroying him. It wasn't exposing him. It wasn't humiliating him. It was becoming someone he could no longer walk away from and expect to find waiting in the same place. When he left me, he thought he was choosing a better future, and maybe, in a strange way, he did, because losing me forced him to face himself. It forced me to face myself, too. I had spent so much time supporting Daniel's dreams that I had forgotten my own. I had measured my value by how much I could give someone else. When he left, I finally asked myself, what do I want? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to become? And once I started answering those questions, my life changed. The biggest client deal of my career wasn't revenge. It was proof that my future had never depended on Daniel. The woman he left was still there, but she had grown, she had learned, she had stopped begging people to see her value. And that was the real victory.